I really firmly believe that you can't make people care about a goal. There's no inherent reason why 39 to 40 should be different from 35 to 36. There's a rise with 9 ending ages for those kinds of affairs. And you even see a small rise in the suicide rate. I don't have to ask myself whether my life's meaningful only once every 10 years. By running a marathon or an ultra or a tri or whatever, that's a good goal because it's an extended goal. It's very defined. Sometimes means that the things you think are not good in those moments actually turn out to be better than you think. They actually are more important than you think. The single best thing you can do if you feel stuck is
So, Dr. Alta, let's talk about what the word stuck even means.
Yeah.
So, when we throw that word around, I feel stuck, I am stuck, I'm stuck in life, I'm stuck in this job. As a researcher, what do you want us to think about when we hear the word stuck or what it actually means or feels like?
Yeah, I think there are two kinds of stuck. There's the one kind where you say, I want to be at point Z and I'm in point A and I need to figure out the path from A to Z that's as short as possible. And the destination is obvious, right? I've got a goal, there's something specific I need to reach. It might be a job related goal, might be a relationship, whatever it is.
Might be like, I want to get my nursing degree, or it might be, I'm sick of being single. Like, so that's when you have a goal and you feel though a little overwhelmed. Like, why would you be stuck if you know what you want?
Because you haven't been able to get from A to even B, maybe on the way to Z. So that's the one. I think that often is easier to solve. There's the other kind of stuck that's just like blah.
Yes.
I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Things just feel kind of dull and gray, and I don't know where I'm supposed. It might be your career, a relationship, a friendship. Life just feels like it's kind of been leached of all the things that make it really rich and interesting. And that's a very sort of diffuse kind of stuckness where it's not attached to one specific thing. And that's incredibly common. So those are very different. One is, I can't complete this goal. The other is, I don't even know which way to turn to create the next goal. And so they're a little bit different, but those both exist.
If I had to boil down the kind of universal sentiment on the looking for help or needing inspiration and guidance, the complaint of feeling a loss of direction is, I think, one of the biggest things that people struggle with.
I think that's right. It's an incredibly common response that I've had to this book and to talking about these issues, that the way life is structured for us today, there is a lot of emptiness. And a lot of what we spend our time doing does not build on the other moments we spend, so that we're building towards something that feels meaningful, that is substantial. And I think a lot of people feel that there's an emptiness to what we're doing a lot of the time.
So is that what we're basically saying if we say we're stuck, that we don't have anything meaningful going on?
I've been running the survey on thousands of people around the world, asking them exactly these questions. What does it mean to you to be stuck, and are you stuck? First thing I'll say is everyone says yes. I am stuck in at least one respect. And then they can articulate it very quickly. They can write to me in the response what they're stuck with and what's affecting them. A lot of them, it's very narrow. You know, I've been trying to learn this piece on the piano for the last 6 years and I can't do it, and it frustrates me every day. And then for other people, it's much broader. It's like, my whole life is one big sticking point. Like, I don't even know where I'm going. And each day goes by and I'm like, how was this day building on the day that came before? It's a sort of meaninglessness to life.
Yeah. Which is so overwhelming, which only makes you feel more lost. Are there particular areas in your research that come up over and over in people's lives where they tend to get stuck?
A lot of it is creativity based. So I think it's hard to be creative. You know, you're asking a lot of a human being when you say, come up with something new or have a good idea. And we all assume that that's something we should be able to do. And our work often requires that of us. And so for a lot of people, it's in that domain. For a lot of other people, it's not work-based. It's about relationships. It's about being stuck in a situation where you have to deal with someone you don't want to deal with, or you don't know how to extract yourself from a situation. And then for other people, it's the broadest kind, which is exactly as we've described this. I don't even know why I'm stuck. I just know that I feel like things aren't the way they should be.
Dr. Alter, I take it that based on the research, this is something that you're going to experience over and over and over again during the course of being alive.
Yeah, a huge part of it is accepting the discomfort that comes from being stuck and recognizing that this is universal, that everyone is in this position at some point, often many points of their lives. There's this incredible research talking about how often these things come up for us, these major changes in our lives that make everyone feel stuck. Bruce Feiler has done some research looking at what he calls life quakes. Life quakes are these huge major life events that affect all of us, and we're almost always blindsided by them. And they're very often not things we want to happen in our lives.
Like what?
Like change in a marital status, a divorce, the death of a loved one, illnesses, things like that. They come up, they happen to us. And they are universal. It's part of being a human being. Some of these are really good things, by the way, but they still force you to change what you're doing.
Like what's a good one?
A good one might be like a job promotion, or you move to a new town or a new state or a new country and you're excited about it. Maybe a marriage is a good one. Having a child could be obviously a huge positive, but also brings complications and change, and you've got to figure those out. So you can be stuck by a good change too. So if your broad philosophy of life is there will be ups and downs and there will be times that are tough, then when those times happen, you don't spend time saying, why me? I can't believe this is happening. There's a whole lot of sort of rumination that goes on if you are surprised by the fact that you're in this position. But if broadly speaking, you recognize that this is what it means to be human, you're just a couple of steps ahead. So it liberates you to start acting and to start making the next steps you need to make to get through that part of life in that moment.
I would love to have you speak directly to somebody who may be really needing a breakthrough when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
Or a breakthrough when it comes to their career or their health. And if you're in your own head and the echo chamber and you're like, but it's hard, but I've dated all these people, but all my bosses are jerks. And you kind of have that story, right?
Yeah.
How do you get started in terms of like to even just get over yourself and the way you're standing in your own way?
Yeah, there's this really interesting paradox that when you are stuck, the thing you most want is kind of freedom. I just want to move. I want to like get unstuck.
Yes.
It turns out that constraining yourself and having very prescribed steps is really useful. So one process I use with people and with companies as well is a process called a friction audit. And a friction audit is a big part of the
friction
book.
Audit?
Friction audit.
What the heck is that?
A friction audit, when you audit, if you're an auditor and you go into the books of a company to audit the books, you're basically like saying, does this all make sense? Let me pour through each line of the books and make sure I understand it all. And a friction audit is an attempt to find the friction. So what is it that's slowing me down? What is it that's not making me move forward or that's stopping me from moving forward? There are 3 steps to a friction audit. The first one is to figure out where the friction is. And that takes a bit of doing sometimes. And even asking the question is a first very important step, because when you feel like you've just described, my bosses are jerks, things just aren't working for me, you're not being thoughtful about it. You just feel things.
Yes.
It feels bad. So the friction audit, basically the process says, figure out what the biggest sticking points are. They could be, every day there's a part of the day that I look forward to least, makes my life least happy. It's the biggest, downward force on my well-being. That's a friction point. Or I'm trying to get from A to Z in my career, and I know that I can never get past C, because C in that particular step is a major friction point that I can never get past. It might be a particular boss I have to deal with. It might be an aspect of my job that I can't kind of refine and improve, whatever it is. If you do that process of introspecting and finding the friction point, you are much better positioned to make forward motion, because the next step is intervention. Is there a way that I can either weed out that friction point altogether or sand it down, smooth it down? And what that means is, for a lot of people, it means spending a bit of time, energy, and sometimes money and saying, this thing is such a big problem for me, it's such a thorn that I need a way to eradicate it, to remove it. And I'm going to throw resources at this problem, whatever resources I have. And so it depends on the context. But if you intervene and you remove that friction point, then you're much better placed to move forward. And the third stage is confirmation, is just making sure that you've actually done a good job. When we think about how to improve life, you described a whole lot of positives. You had a lot of good things in your life as you were going through this process.
Yes.
We often think that the way to make life better is to do more good things. Throw in more fun stuff. I think there's some truth to that. More good things is only better. I think the real bang for your buck in life, if you want to make life better, is to take the lows, the friction points, the things that are hard and bad, and smooth them out or raise them up if you can. I think that's where we should spend our time and attention.
Why?
Because that's where, if you have a lot of good things, but you have a lot of things that are bad, that drag you down, they do a much worse job of dragging you down than the good things can do dragging you up. We are often as good as the worst stuff that's going on. And so if you feel like your life is a series of friction points, but you also on paper have all these other good things, the best thing you can do is not add more good things. It's to take your time and attention and deal with those friction points and often your money and other resources that you have. So that's what I would counsel people to generally do, is focus on bringing the lows up a little bit rather than always focusing on the next flashy vacation, the next expensive thing that I'm going to buy. Those things will help a little bit, but they're never going to help as much as lifting up the lows so that they're not quite as low.
The reason why it's so easy to get stuck is that life just kind of is the same thing over and over again.
I think that's part of it. I think the other thing about being stuck, you just described it, is that when something is a friction point, the natural instinct is to turn away from it.
Yes.
It's to say, I'm going to focus on something else. You know,
Right.
if you're having difficulties in your relationship, the natural thing is to say, well, let's just give it a bit of distance. You know, I got to do some other stuff. You know, you figure out other areas of your life that are more appealing. You throw your attention and time there. And that's a mistake, because those friction points, they kind of nag at you, they become traps. And unless you figure them out and actually deal with them, you're not going to be able to raise them up, and they can end up being problems for decades. And so I think that's a large part of it, is that there's a kind of sameness and a repetition to life. And the repetition comes from ignoring those little things that are niggling, that are sort of pulling at your ankle, saying, hey, do you want to look at me? And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. There are some other things I'd rather do instead that are more fun and more appealing. And that's why a friction audit is so useful, because it forces you to pay attention to what's not working, which we generally as humans don't have the instinct to do.
No, in fact, we not only don't have the instinct to take a sober look at what's not working, we have the instinct to turn away from it.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there anything in the research about particular periods in life or ages where you tend to get more stuck?
Yeah, so I have some research with a colleague of mine, Hal Hirschfield at UCLA, where I was 29 and I felt like I was about to be 30. This was a number of years ago now. I'm much older than that now, but at the time I was 29, about to be 30, and I felt like I had to do something just to kind of show myself that I was still just as vibrant as I'd been when I was younger and so on.
So did you feel stuck?
I felt stuck in various ways. I felt stuck. And
how so? Like, put me at the scene. I want to meet the 29-year-old Adam. You're not where you are yet. You don't have like international best-selling books, like all this renowned research. Tell me who Adam at the age of 29 stuck was.
I had just finished grad school. I was just starting a new career. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in the United States still. I was missing people in Australia. I was single. I felt kind of lonely and unmoored in New York City. I didn't really know if I had a place there yet. And I just felt globally more blah than anything. Like things were going well on paper, but I just wasn't sure where I was headed. And I wanted to do something that kind of showed me that I had drive and that everything was working well. So I signed up to run a marathon, my first marathon, my only marathon. And I did this at 29. And Hal and I were talking about this and saying, we were thinking about the idea that the way we count using this base 10 system,
the who?
The decade, we count in tens.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So the way we count using tens, we think of decades as meaningful, right? So turning 30, 40, 50, 60 is a big deal in our culture.
Yes.
There's no inherent reason why 39 to 40 should be different from 35 to 35 to 36, but it does feel different. And because of that, we wanted to investigate whether every 10 years when your age ends in a 9 and you're thinking about a new decade, does that push you to think more deeply about your life? And that's what we found. So what you find is there's a little spike in questioning the meaning of life around the 9 ending ages. It's like a little end of decade crisis. And you see some interesting things happen on the back of that. So one of them is more people are likely to sign up for marathons the way I did.
At the age of ending a 9?
At 9
like
ending
29,
ages.
39, 49, 59?
Yeah, they're more likely to be interested in things like reading books on aging. You see a little bit of people are more likely to buy those kinds of books. They become more focused on aging. You also see some negative things. If they have a crisis, when they have that questioning of meaning, you see a rise in extramarital affairs. So if you look at the data, there's a rise with 9 ending ages for those kinds of affairs. And you even see a small rise in the suicide rate. So there are profound things that happen at the end of the decade for people. And this is a time when we tend to have these little moments of questioning and when we feel quite stuck.
So is that called a temporal landmark, where there's like this sort of almost marking of time that makes you then assess the span of your life?
Yeah, I think it's similar to how we do this thing of creating resolutions between December and January. It's a moment that just pushes us to think more broadly and abstractly. And because of the way we count, it happens to be just before those new decades.
How can you use this research to your advantage? So you're kind of cruising into the 29th, 19th, 49th, 69th birthday. How do you use this to your advantage?
Yeah, so there are a few things you can do. One thing is to say that there's something very arbitrary about picking those years. You know, you could be 34, you could be 44, you could be 54, 64, and say, this is when I want to do this little audit process. I don't have to ask myself whether my life's meaningful only once every 10 years. And actually doing it more often is better for you than doing it once every 10 years and having this huge, event where it feels overwhelming.
Right.
So do this often. Just ask yourself, maybe once a year, maybe it's your birthday, maybe you don't want to do that on your birthday, you want to do it on a different day.
I think it's the perfect day.
It is. That's what I do, but other people might not want to, have their birthday be about this process, but do it once a year.
Hold on I want to push back on that because the single best thing that you could do as a gift to yourself is to pull out a blank piece of paper and go, where is there friction in my life? Because what I know based on Adam's research is that if I were to turn my attention to the friction in my life and make it a project to either remove it, smooth it out, or face the stuff that I do not want to face, that I know is in the back of my mind and it bugs me, and it's going to bite me in the rear end someday. If you did this, because here's the thing, I'm thinking about this list that I did with Pete. I do it every year.
Yeah.
My business, my life, very different right now than it was even like 6 months ago. And so I think this is like the greatest thing you could do for yourself is to wake up to where are those places in your life where there's like, it's almost like stuck is this signal and this flag from your internal like navigation GPS going ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
Turn toward this.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it on your birthday. Absolutely. I think for some people, it's a kind of overwhelming moment. And so they don't want to do it on their birthday if they prefer not to, but I'm totally fine with it being on a birthday. The one thing about doing it consistently every year is the list should change. If you're doing a good job of intervening, then that's a moment of confirmation when you can say, hey, look, there were these things that 2 or 3 years ago I was writing down. I kind of fixed them. I figured out a way past them. That is incredibly reaffirming. It's the opposite of feeling stuck. It's feeling that you've got forward motion. So there's great value in doing that more regularly. The other thing is, if it does happen naturally when you're 39, 49, 59, that's okay. The research suggests that to make meaning and to deal with these moments in a way that's productive, you can do a few things. One is to set yourself a goal, which is why running a marathon or an ultra or a tri or whatever, that's a good goal because it's an extended goal. It's very defined. It has steps that get you closer to the goal. That's very reaffirming. It's also about connecting with people. So one way we get meaning in our lives is to feel a sense of community, to feel a deep sense of connection with other people. And so if you can do that, if you can make sure that you reach out to all your friends that you've been meaning to reach out to, that will also be very productive on those times when you're questioning the meaning of life.
When you're the person that's stuck and it feels like everyone around you is trying to change you or pressure you to change or help you get out of that rut, is your own almost like fear to admitting that they're right also a big barrier? Like I'm thinking about like if you have somebody in your family that's drinking too much or that has really let their health or their weight go.
Yeah.
And admitting that it's a goal to deal with this also means admitting that other people are right. Did you see any of that sort of social pressure aspect to why people also stay stuck?
Yeah. So I really firmly believe that you can't make people care about a goal or an outcome. You can't say to someone, you're stuck and you have to care about getting unstuck. That's really got to come from the person. You can guide them there. You can show them why it's important. You can have them introspect about it to the point where they say, you know what, I'm now seeing the light. I understand why it's so important to do this. But you can't bully people into saying this thing that's sticking me is a problem and I need to do something about it. So I think the best thing you can do as a loved one, as a friend, as a family member is to make it, without being judgmental, is to make it as clear as possible why this thing matters and kind of gently guide this person along in that direction. Show them that it matters and have them answer some questions about it. That's the best thing you can do is ask questions. Do you want this thing to change? Do you think it could be better? The friction audit is a great example of this because it means it's not about them. It's not confronting. You just say, hey, this is not about you, but tell me all the things that are kind of annoying to you right now. Like what's a friction point? And by pouring out all of those things onto the page, you then have something you can latch onto and at least say, hey, this seems like it's an issue for you. Let's work on it together.
Yeah.
Rather than telling them, here's your problem, we're going to fix it together, which often leads people to push back.
You do a lot of work with companies. So how does this work apply if you feel like you're on a team and the team's stuck?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's originally where I started doing this work, was with companies. It wasn't with individuals, but it was the same idea that companies, either in the way they interact with customers or internally in their operations, have sticking points. Every company, no matter whether it's big or small, even more if it's big, will have this series of bottlenecks and sticking points and red tape and bureaucracy they need to deal with. And so this is an attempt to figure out where those points are. It's also, when you're dealing with customers, a lot of my work is on consumer behavior and human judgment and decision making. Humans don't like stuff that's hard. And if you are losing people in a sort of funnel in your interactions with them, in a sales funnel, moving towards making a particular sale, all of those points where you lose them, you can almost always put it down to friction. Like, you're asking them to do an extra thing, an extra click on a website, go to an extra page, make a phone call, make a text, send an email. And so I work a lot with companies to say, let's figure out where those friction points are and see if we can track what sort of effect it has when we remove those from the process.
Can you speak directly to somebody who feels stuck? They want to change jobs.
Yeah.
They want to put themselves out there again after a breakup. They want to really go after their financial security, but they're scared.
Yeah.
Like, they're scared that if they won't find the job, they're scared that they're going to just meet somebody else that breaks their heart. Could you just talk a little bit about what the research says about why it's so important to do it anyway?
Yeah. So the one thing we haven't really talked about is the third section of the book, which is habit. It's actually doing something. It's acting. The single best thing you can do if you feel stuck is to take a minimally viable action. In other words, the smallest possible action that moves you in the right direction. Try to think of what that tiny little action would be. It might be, if you're in a job you don't like, it might be just learning what the alternatives are, making a list of alternative job options, alternative industries you might want to work in, maybe go even to the point of making a list of specific companies that are your goal companies. And then you can go through the sort of pros and cons exercise of figuring out what are the strengths and weaknesses of each one. But even that small act, doing something, moving in the right direction, is enough to signal that you've got forward progress. And then you can do the bigger stuff later on, but getting the ball rolling is the biggest trick. It's doing the small things so that you're not static. You're actually moving in the right direction.
Why is that important?
It's important in part because you're signaling to yourself that you are the kind of person, again, who can move. The same issue comes up again, but also because moving from zero to any action is really, really important in getting the big action to happen. You have to do that step anyway. And once you start doing it, you're more likely to do more. There's this classic story of Jeff Tweedy, the frontman of the band Wilco, who talks about how when he's trying to come up with creative ideas, it's incredibly difficult. And so what he does is this minimally viable action. He says to himself, when I wake up in the morning and I don't want to be creative, he writes books and he writes music. Sometimes he doesn't want to do either one. He says to himself, I'm going to spend 10 minutes coming up with the worst sentences I can, writing the worst, most boring music I can. Because what he's doing is he's lowering the bar all the way to the ground and saying, I'm going to be non-judgmental. I just need to do something. And that has two effects. One thing is, again, it gets the ball rolling. And so when he's trying to do good writing, it's more likely to happen. But the other thing it does is it's sometimes means that the things you think are not good in those moments actually turn out to be better than you think. They actually are more important than you think.
If the person listening were to just do one thing, like, what is the most important thing that you want them to remember and put into action from this conversation, Dr. Alta?
There are two things that you could do, two ways of approaching life. There are two ways of approaching a sticking point. The first one is called exploration, where you try different things. The second one is exploitation, where you drill really deep into one thing. You cannot do both at the same time. You can't both be exploring all your options and really doing as much as you can to make one particular option work for you. Figure out which stage you're in and then bounce between the two. So try different things, figure out which one is best, drill down on that until you hit a wall, and then go back to exploring again and bounce between those two phases, and you will effectively get unstuck.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Key takeaways. Two types of stuckness: goal-oriented. Stuckness, you know what you want, for example, a new career, relationship goals, but struggle to make progress. This type can often be addressed by breaking the goal into smaller, actionable steps. Diffuse stuckness. You feel directionless or unmotivated with a sense that life lacks meaning or purpose. This form requires introspection to uncover or redefine what matters most. Prevalence and universality. Feeling stuck is universal, affecting everyone in some domain at various points in life. This can range from specific challenges, for example, mastering a skill, to broader existential questions about purpose. Major life events, termed life quakes by Bruce Feiler, often catalyze these feelings. These events can be negative, for example, divorce, illness, or positive, for example, promotions, becoming a parent, but require adaptation and recalibration. Embracing discomfort. Accept that stuckness is a natural and recurring part of life. Recognizing its inevitability can reduce the emotional toll of asking, "Why me?" and free up energy to focus on solutions. Building toward meaning. A lack of meaning in daily activities often exacerbates feelings of being stuck. Engaging in purposeful actions and ensuring that daily efforts contribute to a larger goal can help combat this emptiness. Creativity and relationships. Many people feel stuck in creative pursuits or interpersonal relationships. In these cases, the solution often lies in experimenting with new approaches or learning to navigate difficult interactions. Lessons and applications. Break down goals. For goal-oriented stuckness, identify small, manageable steps that move you closer to your objective. Celebrate incremental progress to maintain momentum. Redefine purpose. For diffuse stuckness, reflect on what brings you joy, fulfillment, and meaning. Experiment with new hobbies, careers, or relationships to uncover what resonates. Adapt to life quakes. Develop resilience by expecting life to include significant disruptions. Treat these as opportunities to grow, learn, and redefine priorities. Focus on action. Avoid overthinking and rumination. Take small, proactive steps to create change, even if you're unsure of the ultimate outcome. Accept the process. Normalize feelings of being stuck as part of the human experience. Share these feelings with others to foster connection and gain perspective. How to apply these lessons in life. Daily practices. Journal to identify areas where you feel stuck and brainstorm potential actions to address them. Growth mindset. Embrace challenges as opportunities for learning and personal growth. Community support. Seek advice or support from mentors, friends, or therapists when navigating challenging situations. Purposeful living. Regularly evaluate whether your actions align with your values and goals, adjusting as needed. By embracing the inevitability of stuckness and adopting proactive strategies, we can navigate life's challenges with resilience and clarity. Thank you for watching. We truly hope that 2025 becomes the year you turn your dreams into reality. Whatever goal you're striving for, no matter how big or small, know that you have the strength and determination to make it happen. Here's to a year of growth, resilience, and celebrating every step forward on your journey. We've got faith in you. Go after it with all your heart. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.